All right, good morning. I'm Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply, and today we are continuing on with the Lewis and Clark backpack. Okay. In the previous video, I mentioned that I was going to do my lid separately off camera, my flap for the bag. Again, if you want to do something crazy and fancy like this, you can revert back to our Mansack messenger bag videos, and we go through a whole video on how to add like the stripe in the middle and do the fancy seam work and stuff like that. Dogs. Sorry, I have puppies and they like to play. So anyway, today or this morning, first thing we're going to do is a lot of skiving, okay? If you have a bag skiver, that will help. Just 1 second. Sorry. Sorry about that. Had to get the dogs quit. So anyway, we're going to do lots of skiving. I'm going to use an NP4 bell skiver for this morning. It is a great addition to any shop. If you don't have one and you want to make bags, I highly recommend it. I realize that like any other good machine, they are an investment, but totally worth it. Alright, so parts that we're going to skive. The first thing is I skived around, as I made this lid, I had to go ahead and skive it because after it's got seams in it, it's a little more difficult to skive. But I skived around the three sides of it, not the base of it, but the end of the flap and the two sides. Okay? My skive is just a little bit more than ½ inch, so maybe 5/8 of an inch wide. Alright, so this is the pocket piece. I'm going to do the exact same skive on it, but I'm just going across the very top. Just like that. Okay. Now, one of the pieces for the, or actually both of them I'm going to end up skiving, but the pocket flap, I'm going to go ahead and skive it. Now, its liner I'm also going to skive, even though what I'm actually doing with that skive is I'm just marking where, basically I'm going to cut the entire skived area off of it, and that's where it'll sit inside this one, and the edges will fold over it and sew down. Okay? So here's the other piece of the pocket flap. And then one of the two, I'm going to also skive that top piece there, just so that it's a little bit thinner where it sews to the bag later when the two layers are on top of each other. Okay? Alright, here I have my, my gusset pieces. On the bottom gusset piece, the big long one, I'm going to skive all four sides. And on the top, the two side gussets, I'm going to skive both long sides and one short side. So only 3 sides of those. Okay? So those puppies, they have every toy you can imagine, but they of course want to fight over the exact same one all the time because they're like children. All right. There we go. One of the side gussets, like I said, I did 3 sides. I left one of the short sides unskived. Do the other one right quick. And then the bottom gusset, we're going to skive all 4 sides of it. Alright, so I got it done. What's left here? I've got my 2 side pieces, or my front and my back. I'm going to do all 4 sides of those. And then also my other big flat piece for the top. I am going to use it. In the previous video I talked about, I didn't know if I was going to use fabric or leather for the lining of the flap. I'm going to go ahead and use leather, because with the seams and the different types of leather, the middle part of this is more floppy than the edges are. So if I line it with the same leather, then it'll kind of thicken everything up and make it nice and rigid like it needs to be. Okay. So, and on this one, on the main, this is just like the pocket flap, the top part where it's going to sew to the bag later. I'll skive on the lining one, but I didn't skive that on the main piece. Okay. So I will skive all 4 sides of this. And again, I'm just skiving what I'm going to actually cut off later. I'm going to use that as a guide to cut off so that it's smaller, so that the other piece can wrap around it. Oh, excuse me, on all sides. Alright, now, the front and back, I'm just going to go ahead and skive one of them, but I'm doing all 4 sides of both of them. I'm just only doing one on the camera because you don't have to watch me do the exact same thing twice every time, right? This thing gets full of, some of these oil tans just don't fall out of the blade as much as, or as easily as other things do, so I gotta keep cleaning it out down there. That being said, this oil tan also, found out when I was sewing that flap, double-sided tape does not stick to this at all. It does to a lot of leathers and a lot of oil tans, but to this one, it's just not. So, yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of fun sewing some of this together without being able to do that. These little triangles are what hold the shoulder straps to the base of the bag. You want to skive the 2 short sides of the triangles, okay? And then one thing I forgot just a moment ago that I will now do, the pocket piece, this one right here, I actually need to skive those areas right there too, because those are going to be sewn, and you want it to be a nice even, or a nice seam right there. So there we go, just like that. Okay. All right. So when we come back, we're going to start putting some things together, and yeah, it'll be a good time. Alright, so the next thing we're going to work on is our pocket piece, okay? And again, these corners right here are going to be sewn together, but an optional step is going to be that maybe you can gouge your fold lines where it'll be more squared off on the front of the bag. Not something you absolutely have to do by any means, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. And so all I'm going to do is gouge from the corner straight up. So right here it goes, basically makes a straight line from the edge of this this corner cutout all the way up to where that skive is. I don't need to gouge the skive, it's already nice and thin. I'm going to do corner to corner across the bottom down here. And I have it on top of this other piece of leather just because the leather that I chose to make this bag out of marks very easily. And my cutting surface where I've used it and punched and cut things is pretty rough, so it easily scratches up the leather. And while this bag will get scratched up a lot, you know, just through normal usage, I just am going to try to protect it as much as I can during the making of it. This is a Ron's gouge right here. his normal round gouges were always 1/4 of an inch wide. He started making an 1/8 inch one for me a couple of years ago as a special request from a customer. And anyway, he finally decided that this would be part of his regular stock. I actually like it more than the 1/4 inch one for things like this, because I don't need that big old 1/4 inch gouge for this project. Okay, so I'm going to fold it along those gouges I just made. And this leather has a lot of pull up to it, so it's even going to show you where I folded it there. Okay, the next thing I need to do though is I'm going to fold down this top part, and I'm just going to sew across it. Okay, I'm going to try to use tape, but like I said earlier, I used some tape on the lid of it yesterday and it didn't hold it worth a dang. Just because of the type of leather that this is and the oil content it has in it. So anyway, I'm going to try the tape, but we'll see if that works out even a little bit. The problem when you're using tape and it doesn't want to stick is even trying to get the paper off the back of the tape just pulls the tape off the leather, so it can be an issue, like it's being right now. There we go. I'm going to fold this over just even with the top of that Skive and stick it down, and then I'm quickly going to run over to the sewing machine before it all lets go, and I'm just going to sew a straight line across the top of it to keep that fold over down. I'm not going to do it on camera. It's a very simple sew line. I will sew a lot of this bag on camera, but I mean, this is just going to be from there to there all the way across, back stitching on each end to lock the stitches in. All right, so I got that sewn. Okay, just right there across the top like we talked about. Okay, so on the pattern is that little cutout right there. Okay, and I just used a bag punch to cut that out. But what that's for is for a D-ring for the closure of the little flap on the pocket. Okay, and we want to make sure and put this on here before we sew the pocket down. Okay, the first one I made, this was an afterthought, and it sure was hard to rivet that thing in after I did all that. So it goes in there just like that with a D-ring on it. It's just another piece of leather, 1 inch wide by, I don't know, 2.5 inches or so. You can always trim it if you cut it too long. Put it in there. I'm going to use my hole punch here and drive a hole right through it so that I can use a rivet on it. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to use a brass rivet on this one because the hardware is brass and I like brass, so there we go. So stick the brass rivet through front to back. I'm going to use my metal anvil here. Put the washer on the rivet. Here I have my rivet setter. It's got a hole in the end of it there. I'm going to put that hole over that over the post. Give it a whack. Okay, now I've got a pair of copper rivets are a lot easier to cut than brass, but I like the brass ones, so I use them. But anyway, we're going to use a pair of just cutters here. These are compound leverage cutters. I don't think I could cut a brass one with just regular side cutters. And then everybody has to watch their eye because it always flies off like crazy. Like Janie's looking at me like I'm crazy right now because I didn't warn her. But anyway, all right, and then it's time to dome that over and peen it out so it mushrooms up over the washer and stays there forever. Okay, so I always start out with the flat side of my hammer and then I'll flip it over. Go to town with the rounded side of the ball peen. Then I'll run my finger across it, and if it catches my fingerprint in any way, as far as, you know, like I get stuck to it, I guess you could say, then that means it'll catch anything you put in the pocket. So I go back to the flat side, and hammer it down a little bit more, and now it's nice and smooth and it's not catching my finger. Okay, so there you go. Now that sucker's set in there. I put mine a little bit too low. I didn't actually use the pattern when I punched my hole there. I should have. Ordinarily I would want that brass rivet above my fold line there, but it'll be okay. When I come back, we're going to start placing the pocket on the bag body, but first I've got another little bitty video I need to make right quick. Alright, so we got that rivet set and everything, and next thing we're going to do is work on our flaps. Okay, so again, I have two pieces to each flap. Here's the flap over the pocket, here's the flap for the bag. Alright, one is going to be the outside piece that you see, the other one's going to be the liner. Alright, but like I talked about, when I skived the second one, it was just so I would know where to trim it off. So I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to trim off the skived area on these. Okay, you can use scissors or a knife or whatever. My knife is probably missing or under something. All right, but I'm only going to do it on three sides. I'm not going to do it on the side that's going to sew into the bag, which is the flat side here. Okay, so again, I'm just going to cut right along the edge of that skive. That skive's a good 5/8 of an inch or so from the edge. And then I'm going to stick the two pieces together and do a rolled edge. Okay, so I'll use the skived area of the outside piece to wrap around the inside piece and sew it underneath. I probably should be using a ruler or some sort of straight edge as my guide, but I'll be all right. Now I'm going to do this process two times, once on the big flap and once on the small flap, but I really don't see the need for you to have to watch me do it twice. It's literally the exact same thing on both, and so yeah, I'm only going to make you watch one of them. Okay, so there, that's trimmed now. So when I put it on the back side of its final piece, you can see here where I'm going to just roll up the outside edge and then I'll sew all the way around that. Okay, it's going to be pretty tricky because, like I said, the double-sided tape isn't really sticking to this leather very well, so this is really going to test my abilities. If you hear me whispering any cuss words, I apologize now. It's going to happen. Alright, so I need to put some double-sided tape around it. I know if my double-sided tape's not sticking to it, then glue won't either, so it's just, I'm not even going to bother trying to glue it. But as I go around and clip it, I'm also going to, or tape it, I'm also going to put clips on it, and hopefully that will help some. But I also have to be careful and use only the few clips that I have that are lined with leather, because this leather will scratch very, very easily. And so I do want to be careful with that. I want all my scratches to be from me throwing it around in an airplane and not from me putting it together. And yeah, this stuff is just walking right off the, I really honestly, you know what, I'm not even going to bother with any more tape. It's not working. There's how easy that tape's peeling off right there. I'm just going to clip it down because it's just not sticking. So I got to dig through. In one of my videos earlier, somebody asked me what was in the coffee can. Well, one of them's full of binder clips. So I got to dig through here for a minute and find all my ones that have leather linings in them. So I'll be right back. Alright, so I couldn't find any of my clips with the leather on them. I must have taken them home for something. Anyway, I'm just going to gently clip these on here and try to remember not to rake them off when I pull them off. Okay, but I'm going to need a lot of clips because, again, this stuff's not sticking at all. And when it comes down to the cornered areas, you know, I want those corners to be as nice and squared away looking as they can be. I will show you how I generally would do the corners on something like this. If I really skived this sucker down thin and made it as fine as I could. But then I'll show you how I'm probably going to end up having to do these since I can't stick them down with any adhesives. Okay. So I'm going to go around and I'm going to clip almost to that corner. Okay. And it's going to take forever to sew this because of all these dadgum clips. But this is the life we chose, right? Alright, and then I'm going to skip the corner itself. Okay. And I'm going to clip on at the other side of the corner. Okay. Working my way around. Now, once I'm done clipping everything else, I would come back to said corner. Okay, let me get that one on there a little tighter. I would come back to said corner and pull it down a little bit at a time here. Okay, so a lot of the time I would take like a scratch awl or something like that. Okay, and I would take it and just split the middle of the corner and pull it tightly down. Okay, and then I would do the same thing again. I would split with the difference of what's left and pull it tightly down. Okay, it's kind of difficult to do because it's not going to stick down right now. Alright, so I'm just kind of holding it down with my finger here, and then I'm going to put a couple of clips on it, and it's still going to look blocky, but that's okay. Again, this is the leather I chose to use, and I knew that we'd have some complications. That's okay. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go around the rest of it here, and then when you come back, we'll be at the sewing machine. Okay, and I'll show you how I sew this thing. The flap for the pocket is exactly the same. I'm going to do exactly what I'm doing on the bigger one on the smaller one. So again, no need to do it twice for you. Alright, I got this thing all kinds of clipped up here. Lots of clips, okay? So we're slowly but surely going to sew around this thing, making sure that we keep that thing tightly rolled, even as we have to take clips off. That's what separates the men from the boys. Alright, I'm going to give a nice, good 1/4 inch of clearance too, because I've got plenty of room on the back side where it's folded over. So I'm going to start out with a back stitch there. I'm going to go forward, and my phone's ringing. I'm sorry, I'll have to pause this. Sorry about that. I am expecting a call, so that wasn't it. Alright, so here I go. I'm going to remove these clips gently as I can, but also try to keep that sucker tucked under there good. Should be pretty easy on most of the straighter areas. It's once I get to the corners that are going to be more difficult. I apologize if my fingers are in the way. I've got to keep that wrapped around there. And some of these are gonna make it difficult for me. Life's always a challenge. So far I'm happy with how it's coming out, but we're also just now getting to the corner, so we shall see. Carefully pull that sucker out. Carefully pull the other one out. Keep it pressed against the table. Come on, buddy. And then the problem is if one of them gets, you know, kind of squared off and then the other one goes perfectly, now your corners don't match. I mean, you know, no pressure. We're getting somewhere. And always be careful, please, when you're sewing and putting your hands right around the needle. I, in 20-something years of doing this, have not sewn my hand yet, but I'm sure my day is coming. I am not impervious to it. Alright, I got to the ends. Now I'm going to do some back stitching. And we'll just call that done. Once I turn it over, I'll know if I did worth a dang. Not terrible. Not the best I've done, but definitely not the worst. Sometimes you might have what looks like a little corner sticking up, you know, where it's supposed to be more rounded. Sometimes you can just depress that and work it with your finger a little bit and get it to round off some and help out. Or even I've hit it with a leatherworker's hammer. But overall, I'm pleased with, as difficult as this leather's proving to be to work with, I'm pleased with how my corners turned out and stuff like that. So, on to the next one. Alright folks, we didn't get near as much done today as I wanted to, but that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. Yeah, tomorrow we will sew the front pocket on and start assembling the bag pieces and see how far we can get tomorrow. Until then, I'm Aaron Heiser, Maker's Leather Supply, and this has been the Lewis and Clark Expedition Backpack. Have a great day.